The rise in gun violence has city, police, and community leaders all trying to get a handle on calming things down on the street. There are continued efforts to bring a stop to it, but the numbers have painted a clear picture that this surge is not going away. Joining me to discuss this, Lucy Lang, the director of the Institute for Innovation and Prosecution at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She is also a former assistant district attorney in Manhattan. Lucy, good to have you back on the program. It has it's been such a difficult time, and everybody's pointing to all of these factors as to why the shootings are up and why the NYPD hasn't been able to get a handle on the number of shootings. What's your perspective on this?
There's no question that violent crime is up across the city, but that's true in big cities across the country, which indicates that it's not attributable to the recent criminal justice reforms. Heartbreakingly, citywide, we've had about 197 murders so far this year to date, as compared to just over 150 at this time last year. And this June, Manhattan had more shootings, has not had this many shootings since 2006. So really something has to be done. But when people are calling upon police, we have to bear in mind this tension that's happening between community and police and think about how we can support community measures as well that are geared towards prevention.
I mean, you've been inside the court system for a lot of years. What has the shutdown of those processes meant to this? Is that ultimately having a factor in maybe leaving people on the street who shouldn't be on the street?
One problem is that the traditional ways that crime gets interrupted by the criminal justice system, which is to say proactive investigations, debriefings of people who are arrested, execution of search warrants, those things are severely limited by the shutdown. So certainly the fact that old-fashioned detective work has been impeded by the pandemic may be contributing to this.
What's the way out of this?
It really doesn't have to be this way, Pat, but it requires all hands on deck. I don't think it means more money for policing. It really means more resources for Harlem Mothers Save and for Cure Violence and other preventative programs. We can be aggressive on gun crime without being excessively punitive, and we've seen what the excessively punitive response does to communities over time in the past.
On the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday, we saw a clash between police and people who we believe were protesters who had come from the Occupy City Hall movement. There is an aspect of this that the NYPD is in the very difficult position of enforcing the law, keeping the peace at protests, but being at the center of those protests, which puts them in a nearly impossible position.
Well, that's exactly right, Pat. And I think that communities need to think hard about what it is we want from police, but that requires collaborating with them and asking for it. And the rising tension, the animosity is not contributing to productive conversation.
Lucy, when you look down the road at these efforts to get communities engaged and to somehow figure out what the path ahead is, obviously that requires all sides coming together. Do we see that happening? There's such animosity.
I don't think we're seeing that happening right now, Pat, but I certainly believe it's possible. And I would just counsel leadership to bear in mind that of the nearly 200 murders to date this year, each one of those had a mother, potentially had a child. I mean, these are real people. And so it is absolutely incumbent on all sides to put away their weapons and their cruel words and to come together to try to create a city that gets back to the historic standards of safety that we had come to enjoy.
Appreciate your insights this morning, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.